Welcome to Highly Sensitive, Happily Married, the podcast that teaches you to not only have an easier marriage as a sensitive woman, but to have one that feels more amazing by the day. Where you'll hear relatable stories, love advice that works, and coaching on how to have a marriage where feeling upset and disconnected is a thing of the past, and where instead a sense of loving connection and even fun and lightness is the norm. I'm Hannah Brooks, highly sensitive person, love expert, and marriage coach, and I'm so happy to be on this journey with you. Hello, lovely ones. So today's episode is a kind of counterintuitive take on why our urge and desire as highly sensitive women to communicate deeply with our partner actually kind of backfires when we're in a state of overwhelm or stress or even chronic low-grade nervous system dysregulation, which, let's be real, is so common in our modern lives as HSPs. So if your communication with your partner ever feels more exhausting and more full of friction than you'd like, and you want it to feel less charged, more easeful, and more connecting, this episode is definitely for you. Before we dive in, though, I want to let you know that enrollment is open right now for Foundations of Emotional Well-Being for HSPs. If you're a sensitive woman who feels reactive or overwhelmed, or like your inner world gets easily shaken inside your relationship, this course, this time together is where we slow everything down and build real emotional safety from the inside out. It's a live 5-week super supportive container, and it's really the foundation for all the deeper work I offer. You can learn more and join us at hspmarriagecoaching.com, and you can go to the courses tab, and right there you'll see Foundations of Emotional Well-Being, or you can find the direct link right here in the description of this podcast in the show notes. I would love to have you inside. So if you're an avid listener of the podcast, you've heard me say this before, but I'll repeat myself. HSPs and deep feeling people are often, unfortunately, in a dysregulated emotional state, in a threat state of our nervous system. And this is because we take in and process information more deeply than the rest of humans. So it makes sense that we'd kind of get to that, what I oftentimes call nervous system dysregulation space, more quickly. So just to clarify, sometimes I will also call this an SOS or a threat state. And the most common term that people use for this nervous system dysregulation is simply stressed. But interestingly, it doesn't always feel like acute stress. It can actually be low grade and something you don't even realize is stress because it just feels so normal to you. It can also feel like numbness or even depression or anxiety or irritability or feeling burnt out. There's a lot of ways that it can show up. So feel free to listen to episode 190, which is a short quiz, and it's called, Are You at All Dysregulated? That episode will give you a sense of all the ways, or many more of the ways, that nervous system dysregulation can show up, so you can see if it might be going on for you. Now, truth be told, if you're highly sensitive and you're living in these modern times with a sort of quote-unquote normal Western lifestyle, you probably do have some nervous system dysregulation. And the reason that I'm talking about that at length is that here's the rub. HSP women tend to want to talk about the difficult things in their relationship, or the deep things in their relationship, and work through anything hard. And of course, this can be amazing. This can be really great because it can help us get to the heart of issues that are coming between us and our partner and work through them so we can be really close and on the same loving team. So I think that this is a beautiful, amazing instinct and one of the things that's so wonderful about us when it comes to relationships. It's definitely my instinct too, and I'll share a story on that in a moment. But having big, deep, serious relationship talks can be really overrated, especially when certain conditions are not in place. So I remember I had a client who told me that the main way that she and her husband worked on their relationship was having deep, serious talks about the hard things in their relationship fairly often. But as we talked about it, it became clear that they were doing that to the point where they weren't doing anything fun or easy or enjoyable, right? All their quote unquote work on their relationship was these hard, difficult conversations that it turns out weren't really getting them anywhere positive, anywhere better. Now, of course, I completely get that deep conversation can be juicy and can be super connecting, even difficult conversations. And you might know that I consider conflict a beautiful doorway into the deepest intimacy and trust. But relying on it as the main or primary path to all of that can absolutely backfire, especially because as an HSP, and really just as a human being in this world right now, it can be all too common to be frazzled, stressed, overwhelmed. In other words, to be dysregulated at the nervous system level. And that is where the problem comes in. Now, so far I've been talking about bigger, deeper conversations that can be difficult and go on and turn into arguments or gridlocks. You probably know the kinds I'm talking about. I'm thinking right now of another client who really got stuck in this pattern of many hours long conversations, or really what would turn into fights, feeling like I must solve this now, you know that feeling? And therefore they'd really stay locked in until deep in the night, like late night. And of course, things just spiraled and things just got harder and harder between them. So when that starts to happen, that type of conversation, when it starts to go in that direction, really, really isn't effective. And it can actually make life with your partner much worse. And we'll talk more about why in a minute and what to do instead. But I also want to make sure that you know that all I'm going to share today also applies to smaller interactions, smaller words and communication exchanges. Even just little momentary interactions can actually be much snappier, much less peaceful, much less harmonious when we're dysregulated. Whether that's a kind of red hot SOS moment, or you're just in a low grade threat state that you might not even really recognize or know is happening. So in other words, anytime we're not primarily rooted in the calm and connect part of our nervous system, communication can be wonky. So if that term, the calm and connect part of the nervous system, is new to you, you might enjoy listening to episode 189 or 172, where I'm pretty sure I explained that in, really simple, clear terms. So looking back on my own younger years, and after hearing from many highly sensitive women, I've come to see that there is perhaps a cultural myth that we could call the myth of the resolution talk. We've been told that if we just find the right words, we'll be understood. And if you listen to last episode, you'll know that I touched on this towards the beginning, that a lot of traditional marriage advice actually fails us as HSPs. And this is one of those pieces. This idea that if we just talk and we can find the right words, we can truly get through to our partner and solve this whatever it is issue. And there's a lot of teachings out there that sort of perpetuate that myth. So if you have a tendency to really want to talk things out and stick through it and find the words and really get through to your spouse, it's not even just that your instinct is wrong so much as that's one of the things we've been taught. But this is really a trap, because the reality is, for an HSP, talking during a nervous system flare-up is just more sensory data that actually feeds that flare-up even more. So it's like a garden being flooded. It's like soil too saturated. Nothing good can grow from that place. And like we've already established, a nervous system flare or stress or overwhelm or flooding or emotional overload, whatever you want to call nervous system dysregulation, happens a lot for us and can flare especially strong during tense conversations or miscommunications or any hint of conflict. And often deep relationship-oriented conversations can be all of that. Not always, of course, and not innately, but often these kinds of relationship talks or conversations where we're trying to resolve something or improve something in your relationship or address something hard, it really amps up your emotional volume dial to even as far as a 10 on a 0 to 10 scale, or maybe just a 5 or a 6 at the least. And it keeps it there. And then you just won't communicate well. You won't share eloquently and clearly, nor will you hear or receive what your spouse is saying well or clearly. You're actually going to misinterpret what your spouse is saying to the negative. This is very research backed. You'll get locked into him kind of being the baddie and like you're kind of against each other. You won't be able to find the words that you really mean to say. And you definitely won't be connected to your heart or to your wise perspective-taking brain. So let's talk about what we could call the survival brain loop. So when you're emotionally flooded, when your nervous system shifts into this survival mode or this dysregulated state, that's what it is, right? When it's in dysregulation, it's in survival mode. And I sometimes call this lizard brain mode. You've definitely heard me talk about the lizard brain if you've listened to this podcast a fair amount. So nervous system dysregulation directly activates the lizard brain. And when that's all happening, you don't talk to connect. You talk because some part of you is trying to feel safe again, like scrambling up the face of a cliff and kind of just like sliding back down. You're desperate to communicate to get to a place of safety, but it's actually not getting you anywhere. Because when you're dysregulated, your words come out kind of sideways. They come out sharp, repetitive, urgent, or of course, just really emotionally charged. And without meaning to, it's like your system is saying, please fix this so I can calm down. But it's almost got this like desperate edge to it or this fighty type energy to it. So in that, you're really trying to get your partner to help you calm down. Fix this so you can calm down. But here's the catch. That tone and energy almost always will activate his survival brain too, and his fight or flight nervous system. So now you have two nervous systems in fight and defend mode, trying to have a conversation that actually requires calm and perspective and openness. So that kind of communication just can't happen from there. Another thing that I want you to notice is that there is a difference between processing and ruminating. And it's the difference between moving through an emotion and simply moving that emotion around verbally. Or honestly, sometimes we can ruminate just in our brains, but I'm talking about the rumination that we do verbally, outwardly to our spouse or with our spouse. So long circular conversations often feel like processing, but physiologically they're actually really closer to verbal rumination. They keep stress hormones like cortisol circulating instead of allowing them to settle and flush out of your system. True processing helps them flush out of your system. And this is one reason why therapy and coaching are so amazing, because you have someone who's in a very calm and regulated nervous system state there to hold your processing, to carry you as you process, instead of spiking your nervous system because they're engaged in fighting with you or trying to prove their point. In any case, the point I'm trying to make here is that very often with our spouse, they're not calm and regulated enough either to allow that to be a truly healing, truly emotionally processing conversation. Now, sometimes it can be if you're regulated in leading that regulation into the communication, or if your partner's actually got some good skills, but all too often, our partners don't have those communication skills and those grounding, emotion regulating skills. But good news, as a side note here, I am creating a little course called the Supportive Partner Micro Course, where I'm going to teach these skills just for your spouse. So if you're not on my email list, you got to get on it, because this is going to be available only for like 1 or 2 weeks coming in February. And after that, it's going to only be available to clients who join me to coach one-to-one. All right, but that was a total side note. I want to tell you a little bit about my own story with trying to have these deep relationship-oriented talks with my husband. So I can recall many an evening talking with my husband, actually my ex-husband, and getting super stuck in loops of stress and conflict and just kind of going on, getting absolutely nowhere. I remember feeling like I had to fix it now. I had to solve this. I had to process this. I had to feel truly heard. So I just kind of kept talking. I would continue to push and to feel flooded emotionally and to kind of argue and repeat and stay in the conflict. And sometimes it wasn't even really conflict, but things would just stay unresolvable. And the really interesting thing looking back, and this could be true for you as well, is that it wasn't that my husband was a fighter. In fact, he was the opposite. He was a go quieter. He would go into shutdown mode, and I'd just be left feeling like I was talking to a wall, into a void. So my nervous system would be all kind of like fighty, and his would be all cold and in freeze mode. And here I'd just keep going on, getting absolutely nowhere except more and more frustrated and worked up. So I obviously learned with time that that is a very ineffective and deeply frustrating and exhausting approach that made my relationship with him harder, not better. And I've learned that there's a much better way that leads quickly to safety and much easier resolution and even real processing of feelings. And that is tending to the foundation of it all, the nervous system. So now that I do this way faster, and in general, my nervous system is much more regulated and resilient, my husband and I rarely ever have those types of ongoing talks that get us nowhere. And interestingly, my husband now, that's my second husband, his nervous system dysregulation style is much more fight as well. And that's actually normally more activating to me than the shutdown that my ex used to do. So it took a little work, but it's amazing to not have those ongoing types of talks that get us nowhere and to still be able to solve things and make our relationship better and better over time. So my main point today is actually simple. If communication with your spouse isn't landing well, if conflict or just irritable interactions are happening somewhat often between you and your spouse, if you're getting caught in these long, drawn-out conversations with your partner that are getting you nowhere, you are not bad at communication and you are not failing your marriage. You're just trying to communicate at the wrong physiological moment from the wrong nervous system state. You're just communicating from an SOS state instead of a wise brain mode, instead of from that calm and connect state from which all of it will flow so much easier and more effectively. The kind of resolving, healing, trust deepening, intimacy generating communication you actually want only comes from that state, from calm and connect, from a wise mode, which comes from nervous system regulation. So the solution is really just a simple formula that you can keep in mind, which is just regulation first, resolution second. When an emotional storm hits, or when something happens in your relationship that you know you want to address, something upsets you, or you're just talking and, you start to feel a little bit of conflict or some spinning out going on there, or some ruminating, you don't try to talk it out. Instead, you regulate it out. We don't want to start with the words. We start with the foundation of a resilient, regulated nervous system. When you're regulated, again, a problem that once felt like a level 10 emergency oftentimes becomes just a level 2 conversation, one that can actually be handled with clarity and warmth and true care. So this is why I created Foundations of Emotional Wellbeing for HSP, which is my upcoming 5-week live course that's currently open for enrollment until February 5th. In it, you're going to learn that emotional safety isn't something your partner gives you. It's something you learn to create inside your own nervous system first, and that leads to a lot more safety in the relationship. So you'll learn how to quiet the internal noise, you'll learn to settle your body, and come back home to your wise brain and your calm and connect state before you open your mouth. So this helps tremendously, not just when it comes to having deeper conversations about your relationship, but also with those more day-to-day, even surface level exchanges, because those too can go off the rails so much easier when your nervous system is not regulated. And when those interactions are kind of light and calm and peaceful and clear, you aren't nearly as likely to need to address anything hard in your marriage anyway. Like bigger, deeper issues don't actually come up as much. And of course, all of this depends on whether you're communicating from that calm and connect state or a threat state. So just to say it super clearly, any communication works best from a regulated state in your nervous system, from that calm and connect state. Another way to put all of this, and along the lines of how I teach this in Foundations of Emotional Well-Being, is to think of communication as a seed. You can have the most beautiful, perfect seed of a conversation, but if you drop it into dry, depleted, or rocky soil, it will never grow. You can't plant an orchid, as I said in last episode, in a rocky desert and expect it to bloom, right? When your nervous system is dysregulated, it's like having dry, depleted soil where nothing good can grow. On the other hand, when it's regulated, your soil is nourished. It's rich with nutrients. It has exactly what it needs to sprout the perfect communication that really blossoms into understanding and solves issues and deepens closeness and trust and security. So another way to think about the regulation first, resolution second rule, when things get heated, stop trying to talk it out. That's like trying to force a flower to grow in a desert. Don't try to plant a solution in that soil. Instead, go back to the soil and tend it first. Give it compost, turn it, feed it, make sure it's getting light and rain and everything that it needs to be nourished, rich, and well. Which really just means tend to your nervous system to soften it and clear the weeds out of high arousal and get back to regulation and a nourished state in yourself. So for something really practical that you can apply right away, when a conversation gets tense, you can just ask yourself, is my soil nourished enough to hold this conversation? If the answer is no, tend to it consciously. Guide yourself back into regulation at the nervous system level. Now, here are a couple caveats. You may not, like I've said earlier, recognize that your soil isn't nourished enough to hold the conversation because the signs can be subtle and we're not necessarily super attuned to them if we haven't learned how to be. So that's why in Foundations of Emotional Well-Being, for one of the lessons, we focus in on tracking our nervous system states and really getting to know what it looks like for us personally when we're even a little bit out of regulation, out of calm and connect. The other kind of obstacle here is you really might not know how to consciously bring online that nervous system regulation. And there's many reasons for that. Primarily, you just haven't fully learned how yet. And there's a lot of information out in the world these days about nervous system and nervous system hacks that actually don't truly help you know how to always guide yourself back to this regulated place and to sustain it the majority of the time. There's even some information out there that actually does the opposite. It actually can throw your nervous system off more. So in Foundations of Emotional Well-Being, you learn what works for your own unique nervous system to help you metabolize the stress that's always coming in just ongoingly. So stress doesn't accumulate in your system. We call this emotional hygiene. And you also learn exactly how to support yourself out of an SOS spike or those moments when suddenly it feels like your threat system is on. And you learn to do this in the best ways that work uniquely for your sensitive nervous system. And you integrate them into a regular part of your life. So this, of course, is going to make regulation first, communication second, this rule, so much easier because you're going to be most of the time in regulation anyway and always know how to get back to it when you kind of fall out. And from there, you're going to have such better resolution and effective exchanges when the time comes for communicating. So if you're exhausted from these marathon discussions or arguments, and the feeling that you're never truly heard, or if you're just tired of the little prickly moments in your communication popping up here and there, I want to invite you to stop focusing on the talk and start focusing on the foundation, to start focusing on communicating from a regulated nervous system state. So of course, we cover exactly how to do this in Foundations of Emotional Well-Being. When you learn to nourish your own soil, your own nervous system, and get back into that emotionally grounded place, the way that you communicate really changes effortlessly for the so much better, because you're no longer speaking from a place of survival. So join me in this course so you can move your nervous system into that fertile, nourished state where you can finally breathe with ease and feel settled and safe and share your truth from your wise brain and heart, instead of spinning and ruminating and fighting and using a sharp tone and talking in circles or feeling desperate to resolve things. The price will be going up to $497 in February. So this is your final window to get it at $397. And on top of that, this is the final live group round. So join us by February 4th when the doors close, and you'll also get access to the 2 new lessons that are coming soon, which will make this course more than just a nervous system regulation course, but a full emotional and mindset guidance course for the most emotional agency, and to ensure that you aren't just feeling better, you're thinking and relating differently permanently. So I'd love to have you join me. You can learn more and join us at the link in the show notes, or head over to hspmarriagecoaching.com and click the courses tab. And right below that, somewhere down there, you're going to see Foundations of Emotional Well-Being. Join us and be oh so well.